Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump's handling of the coronavirus pandemic is being criticized in the United States and outside. From downplaying the crisis to promoting unproven drugs and being absolutely clueless at times about the estimates, Trump has done it all. The Trump administration clearly has failed in the face of this pandemic. One wonders what exactly is going on inside the White House, and who better to help us understand this than a former Trump insider. Joining me tonight on Gravitas is Anthony Scaramucci. He's a former White House communications director, and he's joining us live from New York. Good evening and welcome to Gravitas. Let's talk about what's happening in your country right now, and it's not good news. The death toll in the United States has crossed the 100,000 mark. President Trump says the numbers could have been worse had he not done his job well. How do you assess Donald Trump's response to the pandemic?
But he knew. He had intelligence briefings. He had a memo from Peter Navarro. He knew that he was heading into a very bad situation, but he's a one-dimensional thinker, and he was betting that the pundits and the experts were wrong. And so by waiting, the Columbia University study said that it cost at least 36,000 lives and possibly more. And so he can say, sure, if he didn't do anything and he just let the virus spread throughout the United States, it would have probably killed 1 to 2 million people. But who would do that? I mean, no responsible public servant would handle it that way.
Well, do you think that the president is trying to distract the media with his conspiracy theories against, say, Joe Scarborough, or taking on Twitter, for example, and he's even offered to mediate between India and China on the border?
The fact that you're actually bringing that up is a sign that it has worked at some level, meaning that he has pushed these conspiracy theories. He is the master of deflection. He's the person that will say, don't look at what's going on over here, but let's focus on what's going on over there. He also knows, for some reason, he has, because of the culture war going on in the United States, he has a very strong, ardent 25 to 30% of the people that will do anything, say anything, and will tolerate anything that he's capable of. But he's providing a license to hate. He's providing a license for anger in our country.
Do you think that Donald Trump may have been too hasty in asking governors to reopen? Did he have the election campaign in mind when he said that?
Well, again, I want to be fair to President Trump. I think, you've got the economy suffering. You've got 40 million people that are unemployed, and you've got to weigh the public health and safety concerns, and then you have to intersect that with common sense, and you have to come up with a rationale to get the economy open, because you don't want to annihilate 330 million people. The U.S. government really can't afford to carry the entire U.S. economy for the next year. So we have to find a way to reopen.
And you've been the White House communications director. How tough is it to cover up for the president after he makes bizarre statements during press briefings or on Twitter, which he uses more often? Give us an insight into what really goes on at the White House after the president says something like, why not drink disinfectant?
I had a conversation with him after one of those tweets. He was tweeting about the transgender situation in the American military. If you go back to the time I was in the White House, that was one of his tweets. He asked me my opinion in the Oval Office. I said, it's ridiculous. I said, you shouldn't be litigating that. It got litigated over 20 years. The military made a policy decision. You're now going to reverse the policy decision with a tweet without telling Secretary Mattis. It's ridiculous. And by the way, it had no effect on him. So if you're searching for the pundit or the person that worked for President Trump, if they're telling you that they had an effect on him, then I'm telling you they're full of it. Invite me on. I'll debate the guy, because no matter what you say to him, it's like it goes in one ear, it goes right out the other, and he's going to beat to his own drum and do whatever he wants, irrespective of the people around him.
Let's also talk about the so-called Obama Gate. Donald Trump has hinted that the Obama White House did not give a proper handover to Trump's team. You were part of that team, that transition team. Did the president ever voice any concerns about inadequate information back then?
it's just more nonsense. Again, that's like more deflection. It's just more nonsense. I mean, we can't even figure out what Obamagate is. It's just nonsense. In fact, Attorney General Barr, who apparently is in the tank for President Trump, I mean, he's like, we're not investigating these people or indicting these people. It's just a bunch of total nonsense to gin up his base. There's probably elements of racism in that nonsense. So I don't know. I was on the transition team. We went to the White House the Thursday, or I think it was the Thursday after the election, and met with President Obama. I wasn't in the room when he met with President Obama, but he had a great meeting with President Obama. He came out of that meeting happy about the situation, and I felt, as one of the 16 members of the executive transition team, that we had a very good interface with them. I worked very closely with Valerie Jarrett. I don't know if you would remember her, but she was one of President Obama's closest friends and an aide inside the White House for 8 years. Anything I asked her for, she gave me.
And you also recently tweeted an article that said that Donald Trump is courting a landslide defeat. Are you sure Trump is not going to retain the White House?
Well, I'm not 100% sure, because let me tell you something about Trump world. We're 160 days out from the election. That's like 500 years. That's like going back to Christopher Columbus in North America. So, you can't predict what's going to happen. But if you look at the polling data, you look at the economic dashboard, and you look at the fact that he's losing older women in the suburbs. And if you just go through the 6 most important states, and you look at those differentials, even the Rasmussen poll, which is usually slanted bias towards the president, has him in the low 40s. And so Joe Biden is in his basement, and he's beating up on President Trump. Okay, so you have to just think about how much trouble he's in from an electoral process point of view. And so I know presidential history from somewhat 100 years of presidential history. No incumbent president has won re-election in a year where they've had a recession, an economic recession. So we have a full-blown economic recession. He may be able to skate that because of the fact that it was born from the pandemic, but I think that'll be very unlikely.
Anthony Scaramucci, thank you very much for joining us tonight on Gravitas.
Here, thanks for having me. Okay,
Sure.
Good luck to you.
That was former White House Communications Director Anthony Scaramucci. He was in the job for 11 days. He was with us live from New York.